So today, after our discussion on the 4 inner senses, let's talk about Mala, Vikshepa, and Avarana, the 3 obstacles on the spiritual path. There are 3 so-called diseases that frequently afflict the Antakaran, the 4 mental aspects that we just talked about, hindering our spiritual development. These are Mala, Vikshepa, and Avarana. Mala means impurity, physical as well as mental. Vikshepa are the internal and external disturbances that plague us. And Avarana is the curtain of not knowing that clouds our consciousness. There is an allegory for this. A coin lies on the bottom of a bowl filled with water. If the water is dirty, Mala, also turbulent, Vikshepa, and on top of that is covered by a cloth, Avarana, we cannot see the coin at the bottom of the vessel. Steps taken in isolation do not help. If we only remove the cloth, our vision will still be obstructed by the ripples, by the water. And even if the waves subside, we are still unable to discern the coin because the water is polluted and cloudy. Then what to do? All 3 obstacles must be removed. Firstly, we must take the cloth away, then filter and purify the water, and lastly, quieten the waves. Then the coin can be seen clearly and raised to the surface. Similarly, I imagine our mind is much like water. We could have various obstructions blocking our view to see our mind clearly. Similarly, our mind may be very turbulent. How can we possibly see the reflection of our true self in our mind with the turbulent one? And our mind might be impure, full of imperfections, in which we also cannot make out the conscious being that we are. Let's dive deeper. Mala, the impurities, are our impure thoughts. They obscure and darken our mind. We are mistaken if we think that no one can read our thoughts. We know exactly what we are thinking. Freedom of thought is our birthright, but we should not forget that every thought, as well as every action, comes back to us as karma. External dirt is simple to remove, but inner impurities stick in the depths of our consciousness and are not so easily disposed of. To purify our body, we need perhaps just under 1 hour, but we may require several lifetimes to purify our consciousness. Vikshepa are the disturbances that can stem either from the outer world or our inner world. We can protect ourselves and take precautions against external disturbances like noise, heat, or cold, but attacks from the inside, such as fears and complexes, are only prevented with difficulty. Nervousness, worry, and annoyance are internal disturbances that churn up our mind and obstruct us until we are able to get to their root cause. And finally, Avarana is the curtain of ignorance that dulls the mind. This veil is the reason for us not recognizing who we really are, as the following story illustrates. A young lion was abandoned by its mother in the wilderness and taken by a herd of goats. It got goat's milk to drink and lived with them in the same stall. So naturally, it thought it was also a goat. It bleated like them, and also ate grass like them. One day, a wild lion came that wanted to have a goat for breakfast. All the goats, including the young lion that truly believed itself to be a goat, took to their heels. The lion was very surprised that there was an animal of the same species as himself that behaved like a goat, and so decided to take a closer look. He caught the little lion, and it began to bleat. Pitifully, it shouted, "Don't do me any harm. I am just a poor, weak goat." The big lion replied, "Why do you speak such nonsense? You are not a goat, but a lion, like me." But the little lion did not believe a word of this, and continued wailing incessantly. Finally, the big lion snatched the little one by the scruff of the neck and carried it to a watering hole and said, "Look at your reflection and tell me whether you look like me or like a goat." Here, the little lion finally realized his mistake, and from that time on behaved like a proper lion, and no longer like a goat. This parable shows that often we not only don't recognize the false self-image we have of our true nature, but even deny it. Our Atma, the true self, is itself God. But in the West, we believe that God is a long way away, and that we are weak, sinful creatures. To discover our true self, we only need to look in the inner mirror of our soul. But many are too afraid and deliberately close their eyes. It is our destiny to claim our divine inheritance. Instead, we prefer to eke out a poor and wretched existence. There is another story that illustrates this clearly. An elderly couple who lived in great poverty were in the habit of wandering through the woods every day to gather firewood. One day, Lord Shiva and Parvati, god and goddess of the universe, were also walking in this region. When Parvati saw the pitiable pair, she was seized by deep compassion. Her mother's heart hurt with the sight of them both, and she became angry with Shiva because he allowed no help to come to these pious and thoroughly decent people. Reproachfully, she said to him, "Truly, I do not understand you. You throw gold after bad people, even when they disown and ridicule you. And these two who are pious and devoted remain destitute. Give them something so that they do not continue to live in want and are able to spend a peaceful old age." "You do not understand," answered Shiva. "I really would like to give them everything, but they would not accept it." Unbelievingly, Parvati shook her head, but Shiva said he could prove it to her right now, and lay a pile of gold coins on the path that both of the old people would take. He then hid with Parvati behind a bush to observe further events. While walking, the old people chatted with one another about this and that. Suddenly, the old woman asked, "How does a blind person actually find their way around the woods? One day it could really happen that we are also blind. Let us try it once to see how it would be." "Good. Count me in," said the man. "We can blindfold ourselves with cloth. I'll take a stick to find the way. You place your hand on my shoulder and follow me." No sooner said than done. Now, as they both came towards the gold, they naturally did not see it, and painfully kicked their feet against it. "Blast it!" they shouted. What stupid and thoughtless person puts stones in the middle of the path without considering that blind people also walk here and could injure themselves? Sighing, Shiva turned towards Parvati and asked, "Do you believe me now? It has happened repeatedly in this way until I abandoned trying to give anything to these two." How often does God offer us a valuable opportunity directly, at our feet, but we are not aware of it? Sometimes we are struck completely by blindness and so miss the best opportunity of our life. That is what is meant by avarana here. To look away at precisely the wrong moment, or to give up just one step away from fulfillment. Avarana is also our doubts and fears, the inner feelings of loneliness and hopelessness, as well as prejudice, intolerance, intellectual bias, and much more. Avarana has many facets that all have one thing in common. They prevent the vision of the one reality, God. But how can we get rid of these three stumbling stones of mala, vikshepa, and avarana? First, mental impurities, mala, are purified through satsang, meaning spiritual society and gatherings, mantra and prayer. Inner disturbances, vikshepa, are counteracted with a positive mental attitude through relaxation, concentration, and meditation. And the veil of ignorance, avarana, is penetrated with faith and trust as we follow the words of a spiritual teacher and spiritual scriptures, breaking down the inner barriers and prejudices and opening to new experiences. A simple and extremely effective spiritual practice that frees us from mala, vikshepa, and avarana can be practiced very easily by anyone in everyday life, and that is called anupasana. Anu means a tiny little part, an atomic particle. Upasana means to follow, to perform, to practice, to start on something. So anupasana is a small resolve that barely costs any time or expenditure, but with regular practice brings invaluable benefits. It promotes spiritual development, develops willpower and self-confidence, purifies our inner field, and protects against internal and external disturbances. Practice something that you would like to do that is of benefit to yourself or another every day. It doesn't need to be some great undertaking. Begin with little steps. For example, change an unhealthy habit. Drink fewer cups of coffee or eat fewer sweets. Begin to build up good spiritual habits. For example, saying your mantra 5 times when you get up, before each meal, and before sleeping. Do something for nature and animals. Feed the birds and woodland creatures whenever the opportunity presents itself. Within your family, willingly do one extra thing that you have previously avoided. Or turn your attention to fellow humans with more love. Create a little joy for a colleague you have not previously paid any attention to, or similar acts of kindness. There are thousands of possibilities for delighting others and ourselves through small, loving gestures. Accomplish these with the thought, I am not the doer. It is God who is doing through me. God alone is the doer. Even the smallest endeavor bears rich fruit through the grace of God. And we'll pause our reading of The Hidden Power in Humans there for now. Thank you for listening. What a wonderful exposition on the 3 obstacles in the spiritual path, and lovely stories about the lion and goat and the elderly couple, and Shiva and Parvati. Next time we'll read about the 3 tapas, the 3 forces of destiny. So far, this has been a must-have book. I'm very grateful for its author, Paramhans Swami Maheshwarananda, and one of his wonderful devotees, Ushabai, for sending this to me all the way from Serbia. Om Namah Shivaya.